Hello and welcome, football fans, to Week 9 of the Squirtle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Diesel Horse Law Firm. I am your host, Andy Campbell. 2 more weeks left in the regular season of Oklahoma high school football, so we're going to be discussing district titles and playoff pictures tonight on the show. To help us with that, we have all the experts lined up: Todd Miller, Tom Nelson, Mark Rogers, Jacob Dieselhorst, and then one guest picker tonight, who is Bill Haston. Bill is a sports columnist at the Tulsa World and does a great job covering all kinds of sports in the great state of Oklahoma. Bill, thank you for joining us tonight. Typically, Squirtle has 2 games of the week every week. In Week 9, we're bringing you 3 games of the week. Mark Rogers and Sam Mays will be calling Coweta at Del City. Todd and Scott will be in Bethany as the Broncos host Blanchard. Tom Nelson and Adam Dieselhorst will bring you the Millwood at Hennessy game. Guys, let's go ahead and jump into our first Pay Dirt Pick'em game. Let's start with a good matchup in District 5A2. Piedmont 6-2 overall, 3-1 in the district. The Wildcats travel to Bishop McGuinness to take on the Irish, who are 7-1 overall. These 2 teams are fighting to stay in the second or third positions in 5A2. Guthrie currently 4th in that district, but has an easier schedule on paper to finish the last 2 weeks of the year. Mark Rogers, kick us off. Piedmont at Bishop McGuinness.
Piedmont's been on a nice little roll here lately, and they have the flexbone offense. Jeff Hall has done a nice job with that. But I think there's a clear demarcation between Carl Albert McGuinness and maybe the rest of the district. So I'm going to go with McGuinness here. I think Piedmont will be the 4th team in that district, but the Fighting Irish still, I think, a contender to try to win the state championship in Class 5A. It looks like it's Coweta's right now to lose, but I think Bishop McGuinness is pretty good right now. So I'll take McGuinness to beat Piedmont.
Todd Miller.
Well, it's a very difficult stretch, as you alluded to. They had Bishop McGuinness this week, and then they closed against Carl Albert. The Wildcats, as Mark alluded to, really have been playing well. I mean, their last 4 games, they've averaged 44 points or more. The problem is they don't match up well with Bishop McGuinness. They're 0-14 lifetime against the Irish. Last year, they lost 18-0. Of the 14 meetings, 10 of those have been games in which the Wildcat offense was held to 10 points or less, and 4 of those 10 were shutouts. The Wildcats, if they can manage to get ahead with that offense, they have a chance to stay competitive. I just think Bishop McGuinness has way too many athletes all across the field. As Mark also alluded to, this is a year that they have a real legitimate shot to win Class 5A and be their first state championship since 2007. Too many athletes for the Irish, and they roll at home.
Tom Nelson.
Yeah, I went to the history book to help make this pick, and Todd just took all my numbers. But Bishop McGuinness leads the series 14-0. They've won those 14 by an average of 27 points. Closest that Piedmont has been was a 12-point loss in 2014. I think I'm going to ride with the Irish on this one.
Bill Haston, let's go to you.
Wow, I had no idea the series was that one-sided, or I wouldn't have done an entire page of notes here. But no, I like McGuinness because they're at home. I like McGuinness because 2 months ago, I mean, in addition to its recent body of work, 2 months ago, they beat Clinton by 32. I have a history of watching and covering some Clinton football, and I don't care if it's a slightly down year for Clinton. You beat Clinton by 30, that's a real legitimate victory. And then, I've seen Bishop Kelly, and to beat Bishop Kelly 35-6, as McGuinness did, Kelly's a lot better than their record. They got a really nice roster. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what to expect from Piedmont. Their offense is really productive against outclassed opponents, and then they lose 27-0 at home to Guthrie. So, I mean, to me, it's probably the easiest pick on the board is McGuinness.
Jacob Dieselhorst.
Yeah, so you mentioned there was 3 games of the week this week. I mean, I think every game on the board is just a great matchup with a lot of playoff implications, and this one for sure fits that category. Piedmont, like you mentioned, has been winning games again, getting back to their old ways, running the football, dominating possession, playing football their way. Bishop McGuinness, their one loss this season was to Carl Albert in a very close game that I think Adam and Mark called. But the one thing I did notice about that game was that Bishop had a little bit of trouble containing Carl Albert's running game. And that's, I think, that maybe in a few little breaks here and there, is why Carl Albert got the best of him that day. So I think because of that, I think this game is going to be a little bit closer than everybody might think. But I have Bishop a 14.5 point favorite at home. And I think Bishop wins the game, although I do think it's going to be a closer game than that. Actually, I picked the score 38-28.
Xavier Robinson of Carl Albert is legit as a junior. I mean, he ran through McGinnis that night, but that guy is something else. I think I saw that he'd gotten an Iowa State offer. I think there's going to be some more to come. He can run. He's fast for his frame, and I think he's going to be a guy that his recruiting picks up in the next 6 months.
Yeah, he was the player of the game that game. But speaking of running backs, you got to mention Bishop's running back Michael Taffy. I was very impressed with him and have been all season. He's like the whole package. It looks like, he can run, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a tough, strong runner. So it'll be fun to watch this game. But again, I think Bishop being at home is the team to beat Friday night.
Jake's been waiting all fall to go emo on us with that nice hat that he's got on tonight. So I'm very impressed.
I'm keeping my temporal
I
lobe
need to pull
warm
over this, but I couldn't do it. I can't pull it off.
Yeah, I'm keeping my frontal lobe warm so I don't go off like I did last week.
Well, let's go from Class 5A down to Class A. District A3 as the Cashion Wildcats hit the road to Hinton to take on the Comets. These two teams currently tied for that fourth position in A3. Both of these teams control their own destiny, but Hinton has a Week 10 game versus Watonga, while Cashion's Week 10 game is against undefeated Crescent. Todd Miller, it seems like all the pressure is on Cashion here to get a win and Hinton on Friday.
I know that I've been gone for a while, but this collectively might be the most difficult set of games that we've had to pick. And this is one of the toughest for me. I wished I didn't have to go first. It is unfathomable to me that we are talking in week number 9 of the high school football season that the Cashion Wildcats, the defending state champions, could miss the playoffs. That's probably going to happen if they don't win on Friday night at Hinton. In fact, the loser of this ball game probably is going to be out on the outside looking in as far as the playoff picture is concerned. It is week 9. We knew Cashion was going to be young. We knew they were going to be rebuilding. But to me, it's still a mystery as to how inconsistent this program has been. And all you have to do is look to their game last week against Woodward. They led the Boomers by 3 at halftime, 24-21. And then the sky just completely fell in on them. I mean, they were beaten pretty soundly the second half, end up losing to the 4A Boomers. So consistency has been the main key, I think, for Coach Shack at his club in Cashion. And this is a tough stretch for the Wildcats, too. They get Hinton, who's 5-3 at home this week, and then they play their War on 74 rival Crescent, who's leading the district next week. The Comets started the year 3-1. They have split their last 4 games. They had a huge win, though, last week over Minco to keep their playoff hopes alive. Hinton's first win in 3 games this year that has been decided by 4 points or less. It's their 4th game at home, and they really haven't played all that well at home. They're 1-2 on the year. I'm going to go with Hinton to win simply because they're at home. I think they've got more experience back. They have 8 returning starters on offense, and it sickens me to have to pick against Cashion and to think that the Wildcats may miss the playoffs, but that could be the reality this year in Kingfisher County. I'm going to go with the Comets at home.
Tom Nelson.
Well, can you imagine next week? I mean, Crescent is going to be fired up to take on Cashion, that big rivalry game next week, because Crescent's on an upswing and Cashion is not. There is a lot on the line in this ball game. Home team's playing better right now. Hinton has gone 1-2 against the top 3 teams in the district, coming off the 19-18 win at Minco. They lost the other 2 games by a total of 5 points. Cashion's tough early schedule would normally pay off down the stretch, but they've lost their last 2, and their 3 wins this season are over teams that are a combined 3-20. Wow. I picked against Hinton last week at Minco. I'm going to go with the Comets this week.
Mark Rogers.
Yeah, picking these A3 games is impossible. I went through all the playoff scenarios this week and projected a bracket, and it's still really difficult to project this bracket kind of at the bottom. I think at the top, CHA is and Crescent are fighting for the top 2 spots. I understand Hinton's these district games. They lost to Christian Heritage in overtime by 3. They lost to Crescent by 2 at home. They beat Minco last week by 1, but they've lost the close games at home. So I know last year they played Cashion as well as anybody did on the entire schedule, maybe save Ringling or Pawhuska, but I'm gonna go with Cashion in this game and say that when their backs are against the wall to try to get into the playoffs, that they find a way to win.
Bill Haston.
I just wonder where Cashion is from a confidence standpoint, having – I got a fire truck out here. Sorry. Really, I mean, they got blown out on opening night at home by Rejoice, who I think you guys have seen. I think Rejoice had a game of the week scored.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys know Rejoice can really play, but for Cashion to get like running clocked in the opener, their psyche must be damaged to some extent. They've got 2 losses in their last 2, or they've lost in their last 2. Hinton, like you guys said, won a dramatic game last week. So in spite of a very clever onside kick by Minko, which I thought was fantastic. So I would take the team that has a little bit of momentum and the home team. So I got to go with Hinton.
Jacob Easterhorse, Cashion at Hinton.
Again, this is basically an elimination game in A3 for the playoffs, especially from Cashion's standpoint. With one more district game to play and Crescent, staring them down next week, and whereas Hinton, on the other hand, has a very winnable game at Watonga next week, and so it seems like the cards are kind of stacked against Cashion this year. That's definitely a rebuilding year for Coach Shack and company. In district play, Cashion has been competitive in every game, except for the games against the top of the district. And Hinton showed last week that they can beat the top teams in the district. They won that game against Minko, and they also lost a tight game to Christian Heritage earlier in the season. And so I got Hinton an 8.5 point favorite at home in this game. As much as I want to pick Cashion to win this game and keep their playoff hopes alive, I just can't do it. I just don't think they have the horses, and Hinton's got too much. Hinton's still playing for too much. And so while I have Hinton 8.5 point favorite, I do think it's going to be a tight game. I got Hinton winning 28-27.
One little key fact, guys: whoever finishes 4th in that district gets the privilege of traveling to Ringling for the first week of playoffs. So maybe try to finish 3rd in A3. Let's stay in A3 for our next Pater Pick'em game. Is the undefeated Crescent?
No more A3 games.
What's that?
All these A3 games are. I don't think I've got one right all year. So,
well, you get one more shot.
Bodes well for Hinton.
Crescent Tigers hosting the 6-2 Minko Bulldogs. Minko has faced some injury issues the last couple of weeks and dropped a heartbreaker last week at Hinton that our panel just talked about. Crescent just keeps winning, guys, including a really good win, 26-13 at Christian Heritage a few weeks ago. Tom Nelson, kick us off. Tell us what you watch for in Crescent at Minko.
Yeah, it looks to me like Crescent can clinch A3 with a win. Of course, I might be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me without diving too deep into it. Christian Heritage is done in the district at 4-1, and Crescent handed CHA that district loss. The Tigers are trying to go from the outhouse to the penthouse in one season. They were 0-5 in A3 a year ago, and they're trying for their first district title since 2017. The Tigers don't have a bunch of guys that wow you with their stats. Quarterback Cade Varner, he completes 60% of his passes, takes care of the ball pretty well. CJ Wilson and Tanner Rice have combined for about 800 yards rushing. The JL Fisher squad is salty on the defensive side, giving up about 10 points per ball game. This is Minko's last district game, and they have lost their last 2 to Christian Heritage and to Hinton. I'm guessing they're feeling the bumps and bruises a little more after that last couple of weeks, and I'm a big fan of how JL Fisher runs his program at Crescent, so I'm going to take the Tigers in this one.
Mark Rogers.
By the way, I wanted to get one of Ray Maple's suits and then take the under with the amount of money that it would take to buy one of those. He's looking always sharp in the commercials for Maples, Nixon, Diesel Horse, and I'm going under of the 57 in that Cashion Hinton game. Matter of fact, really go under that. But I think this is another low-scoring game between Minko and Crescent. Crescent's defense has been amazing all year, and I think Crescent's kind of on a mission this season. So I'm going to take Crescent in this game, but again, I've not picked many A3 games right all year, and they've been really competitive. It's a really good district, and it says something for the fact that Cashion had the lead on Woodward last week. It was a Class 4A team. It was a Class 5A team a year ago, and that they may not be able to, if Cashion things would have gone better and they don't make the playoffs, and where do you think Woodward, a 4A team, would finish in A3? So these are all really good teams in this district, but I'm going to take Crescent in this one.
Todd Miller.
Tom alluded to this, that Crescent has had a great turnaround season. They went 0-5, as he alluded to, in the district, and 3-6 overall. This year has kind of been the Tigers' year. You would expect a veteran football team to win a lot of close games, and they have. Of their 7 wins, 4 of those have been decided by 2 touchdowns or less, and they've won a pair of games by a combined 9 points. They have 2 really good players that split time sometimes at quarterback, Varner and Rice. The latter has seen some playing time down the stretch a little bit more maybe than Varner has. But if you've got 2 really good quarterbacks, especially the Class A level, you've got something special going. The offense for Crescent has been pretty good, but it's been their defense that they've really ridden all season long. They have allowed 2 touchdowns or fewer in 6 of their 7 games. And in 3 blowout wins this year, they've allowed right around 200 yards of offense. The Bulldogs of Minco, they're never going to wow you with their offense. I mean, they have really struggled to score points. They have scored a total of 25 points in their last 2 games, losses to Christian Heritage and Hinton. They started the year 6-0, but Wardlaw's team has now lost 2 straight. And, they may have a chance to finish 3rd or 4th in Class A3. Their quarterback play has just simply not been good enough. The quarterback rating for Minco the last 2 weeks, 17.4 and 3.8. And that's just not going to get it done. And that's the reason they've lost 2 in a row. The Bulldogs won last year by a point. Crescent lost a lot of tight games last year, but they've got the experience. Like Tom said, J.L. Fisher has been there a quarter of a century, 25 years. He has this program playing with a lot of confidence, and I think they're going to win handily at Minco.
Crescent at Minco. Bill Hastings, let's go to you.
I love that Crescent. So many of these teams, so many of the better teams score so many points that you always wonder how they're going to react when it's a tight game, when it's a 4th quarter game. And Crescent, I love that they win so consistently in close ball games. And they've won games this season, fellas, with point totals of 7, 18, 26, 23 points. So now if they have a little bit of an obvious talent edge combined with their poise and that they've been tested in these close games, I love Crescent in this game a lot. By the way, Mark, how many Oklahoma high schools are nicknamed the Tigers? You ever done that?
I do. I have that number. We did it in like Magazine 2 back in 97. Eagles is the most prolific name in Oklahoma, and Tigers, I think, is number 2.
45 high schools.
Wildcats is up there.
Tigers.
That's a bunch.
Yeah, it's a bunch.
Jacob,
I kind of regret that I even researched it because it was way more time.
That's got to include some basketball schools, right, too, that don't play football.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty good.
Several. Right.
Jacob Easterhorse, Crescent at Minco.
I was just looking at my sheet here, and I realized that I had formulated my point spread thinking that this game was being played at Minco. And now I'm looking on OSSA, and I'm seeing that the Crescent's hosting this game. That changes things significantly. Just so you guys know, you'd be interested to know, I had Crescent a 4.5 point favorite playing on the road at Minco, but being at home, I now have them a 14 point favorite.
It's at Minco.
It's at Minco? Well, then
At
OSSA is wrong. Okay, then I will restart here. This is going to Minco is overrated, I think, a little bit. I think they haven't really beat teams that they shouldn't have beaten, whereas Crescent has beaten everybody that you put in front of them. And I think that holds true this week in Minco. Crescent's just too well coached. They seem to be on a mission this year. They seem like a team that's got the district championship, on their list of goals, and probably the state title game as well. So on the road, I've got Crescent a 4.5 point favorite. This is going to be a slobber knocker game. It's going to be low scoring, but I have Crescent winning, and I think they'll cover that line just barely at 20-14.
All right, guys, let's talk some 8-man football. This game is for a District B3 title. As Covington Douglas travels to Sealing. Cub Doug has been very impressive in his last 2 games with a 36-0 and 48-0 wins over Canton and Wacomas. Only loss this season was week 0 at Timberlake, 28-26. Sealing has also been impressive since their lone loss of the season to OBA in mid-September. Tom Nelson, we'll start with you on this 8-man matchup, Covington Douglas at Sealing. You're on mute, Tom.
It's the best you've ever sounded.
Boy, I hope that's not permanent.
There you are.
All right, here we go. It's the game of the year in B3 with two teams head and shoulders above the rest of the district. See, it's Covington Douglas hasn't lost since a 2-point loss to defending Class C champ Timberlake. That was in the season opener. Sealing's one loss was to OBA by 20 back in week 3. Cov Doug has a good sophomore quarterback, Ford Smith. He's the coach's son. He's completed 65% of his passes for almost 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns, a couple of picks. Gavin and J.C. Hooten have combined for over 1,000 yards rushing and 17 touchdowns. Gavin is also their leading receiver. He's got almost 500 yards receiving. The Wildcats have 2 straight shutouts and are giving up around 10 points a game. I saw Sealing lose to OBA, and the story that night was the injury that knocked out their quarterback and linebacker. His name's Caden Manuel, knocked him out of the game that night. We didn't see him the rest of the night, and I didn't know if we'd see him the rest of the year because that was a tough injury. He's back, and he must be tough as a boot. And he's a load as well. This is a tough call. I could just say I'm taking the Wildcats and leave it at that. Both teams are playing well down the stretch. Sealing's at home, and they have the more impressive win this season over Laverne. So I'll take the Sealing Wildcats as opposed to the Covington Douglas Wildcats.
Two Wildcats. I'm talking about the Cashman Wildcats, Bill. So that's part of the tally there in your research. Todd Miller, let's go to you. Covington Douglas at Sealing.
Well, I've seen Covington Douglas already once this season, but when you look at their numbers, they are so balanced, perhaps as balanced as any team you're going to find in 8-man football. They average just under 216 yards a game through the air. They average 227.5 yards rushing. That's unheard of, really, in 8-man football. I mean, most teams don't throw the ball like Covington does. Ford Smith, as Tom alluded to, really he really takes care of the football very well, values possessions, only 2 interceptions for an underclassman. That's remarkable. Gavin Hooten is one of my favorite players that I've seen in the games of the week this year. This guy is a terrific athlete. He's averaging almost 175 yards a game in all-purpose yardage. He has 19 total touchdowns through the air and on the ground. Cashin has a ton of speed, and they've been very opportunistic this year. They forced 12 turnovers in their 7-1 record. Sealing, as Tom alluded to, they have a really good playmaker, Caden Manuel. He had 362 yards and 4 touchdowns at aforementioned 40-38 victory over Laverne. Sealing has averaged just a tick under 54 points a game in 6 of their 7 wins this year and scored 40 in the other against Laverne. Cody Peaster is a terrific athlete. They've got athletes on the field. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think there will be 60 or more points scored combined between the two. But I'm going to agree with Tom. I love Covington Douglas, but I think I give the nod to Sealing because the Sealing Wildcats were at home.
Mark Rogers.
Okay, I got a lot to say. First, I want to give credit to the people from Jones last week who treated us great. Todd and Adam and I had my first ever 50-50 burger. It was half blue and gold sausage.
Outstanding.
And half burger. That was really good. But I found out something tonight that blew my mind, is that Todd's dog eats at Razoo's, which means we should have had Todd take us out. Todd's dog eats better than I do. So, I mean, I don't know. The next time we do a game of the week, it's on Todd. He's taking Adam and I out. And we're going to go someplace and have a nice meal. So this game, Gary Manuel, the head coach, Caden Manuel's dad at Sealing, played on the Snyder Cyclones team that ended Morrison's state-long winning streak. I think it was at 88 or something like that. So there's a lot of great 8-man genes, I think, in the Sealing Wildcats. And Caden Manuel, I think, makes a big difference. OBA, maybe the team to beat in Class B. I don't think really anyone saw that at the beginning of the year, that they may be the best team in that class with some of the perennial powers there, Dewar, Shattuck, Laverne, and those type of teams. So I do think Sealing wins a game. I think it'll be close. I think the 2 quarterbacks are excellent. I want to apologize again to the Covington people that I picked Garber to beat them earlier this year when they won by 50. The worst pick by far that anyone will make all season long. So you should wear it as a badge of honor. I pick against you, you win by 50. But I'm going with Sealing. I don't think they'll beat Sealing by 50, but I'm going to take the Sealing Wildcats over a team in Covington that I give props to. They're better than I thought.
Bill Hasten.
This is really more of a guess than a pick because I know next to nothing about these teams. But when I did do 10 minutes of research, the 2 takeaways that jumped off the page to me most were that, okay, Covington Douglas has the 1 loss, but a 2-point loss on the road to Timberlake is the essence of a good loss. And then the last 5 weeks, this is This is impressive in any class. The last 5 weeks, Covington Douglas defense has given up 3 touchdowns in 5 weeks. So I think defense travels when offense may fluctuate week to week. Defense can go play just as beautifully on the road as it does at home, like we saw with Oklahoma State at Waco a couple of weeks ago. So on that basis, I just think if they take that level of defense into Friday night, into this game, I like Covington Douglas to win it.
Jacob Esource.
You know, I don't think Sealing has been this excited about their football team since the days of the great Darren Redinger. Shout out to D Red. Or maybe the days of Jordy Mercer. Since Sealing has had a team that they can be this excited about. And you look at their scores the last few weeks, I mean, just dominating teams, playing, hard-nosed Northwest Oklahoma football. And between these two teams, you're talking about the 2 best teams in this district. You're talking about this is the district championship game. Sealing gets the advantage by getting to host the game. But if you look at the 2 teams' resumes, I believe Sealing has the best win of anyone with that win on the road at Laverne, 40-38. I expect this game to be similar to that game. I expect it to be a high-scoring game, 2 very good offenses, 2 very good defenses too. But that's it. The offenses are just so good for these teams that I expect it to be high-scoring. I've got Sealing a 6.5-point favorite at home, which basically means it's a pick 'em if this game is played on a neutral field. And I think Sealing wins the game 41-40.
All right, guys, we are halfway home. The rest of these 4 matchups are bigger schools other than a 2A matchup game of the week that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Pick'em game number 5, Noble at Midwest City. The Bombers lost their first games of the season at Carl Albert and against Del City, but have won 6 in a row. Since then, have looked very impressive in all of those games. Every game Noble has played in has been chaos. The Bears have lost 2 overtime games at El Reno and at Duncan, and then won 60-56 over Ardmore and 52-38 at Altus last week. Mark Rogers, tell us what to watch for in this 5A1 matchup.
Well, that was you're right. All the Noble games this year have been, hard to describe. And Altus hasn't scored that many points in a game. If you combine, I think their entire point total of the whole season. So I don't know what to say about the Noble defense. It's just it's not been very good. They've got a good win over Elgin, only loss in the district for Elgin this season. So I think anytime that Noble plays, you're kind of guaranteed to have a game that's going to go right down to the wire. I think, Midwest City shows that they're kind of the class of the district by dropping down from 6A. They're undefeated. I expect them to win the district. And we could have a situation where all 3 Mid-Del schools win districts. Now, that would take some work on Del City's part to have to beat Coweta coming up, and that might not happen. But Carl Albert is in really good shape, and I think Midwest City is in really good shape to win the district. So I'm going to go with Midwest City in this one over Noble.
Tom Miller, let's go to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't been on Noble's bandwagon all season long. They bit me early in the year. I picked Blanchard to beat them. Blanchard lost. I picked Piedmont to beat them. Piedmont lost. They got off to a great start. They were 2-1 outside the district. They won 3 of their first 4. Since then, they've split 4 games. And as Mark alluded to, a terrible performance last week against Altus, who's winless. However, the week before, they handed what's going to be the best team in the district, Elgin, their only loss. They have 2 huge contests coming up this one and then next week against Lawton Eisenhower. Colin Fisher has been really, really good. He's one of the better rushers. He's thrown for over 1,700 yards. Jekyll and Hyde, you just don't know from almost one half of football to the next what you're going to get with Noble. And as Mark alluded to, Midwest City, in my opinion, too, is the class of the district. They lost 8 defensive starters. They started off with games against Carl Albert and Del City. Since then, they haven't lost. In fact, during that time, they've averaged almost 40 points in offense a game. You're going to struggle regardless how many people you have coming back or don't have coming back in this case when you play those 2 teams. But I really, really like Midwest City. I think they've got athletes. They always have athletes. They're hungry. They missed the playoffs last year for only the 5th time since 1977, I believe. And they've got a playmaker at quarterback, D'Angelo Irvin Jr., 2-sport stud there. Well, 3-sport. He plays basketball and baseball as well. I like the Bombers fairly comfortably at home over Noble.
Tom Nelson.
The Bombers have had absolutely no trouble with the schedule after an 0-2 start against Carl Albert and Dell City. During the 6-game winning streak, nobody's gotten within 20 points of them. Most impressively, 2 weeks ago on the road against MacArthur when they beat 37-14. It's funny, Todd called Noble a Jekyll and Hyde team. I've got him down as a Jekyll and Hyde season in my notes here.
Yeah.
They give up a lot of points to teams that aren't very good. 2 weeks ago, they beat Elgin. They hand them their first loss. And last week, they almost hand Altus their first win. You take out that first game against Piedmont, they're giving up 41 points a game. Pretty easy pick here. I'll take the Bombers.
Is Ted Roof their defense coordinator?
Oh, hey, it's good to see everybody back this week, but I think Andy, I mean, he lost control of the show last week. So
I blame it on the sinus infection. I had a lot of NyQuil before the show, but I think I'm back to close to 100%. And hopefully the OU people don't I don't get too many calls and emails.
Shots fired. That's right over my head. I hear you, Norman.
Yeah. Bill Haston, let's go to you. Noble at Midwest City.
Midwest City is the answer to a trivia question up here. The last school to win a large school or a 6A championship that wasn't from Tulsa County. It was Midwest City 27 years ago. My son was 2 months old at the time, and now he teaches AP history at UConn High School. So, and I think that quarterback from Midwest City that year, Andy Collier, isn't he?
He's their AD.
Is he a principal at Mustang or something?
No,
He's
no,
mid-L
Andy-
AD now.
Yeah, he's the mid-L AD.
He's a grown man now. That's crazy. So, no, I mean, like you guys have covered so well. I mean, Midwest City had the first 2 weeks that looked kind of like a Wasso's. A Wasso opened with Bixby and Jinx. And so Midwest City had a brutal 2 games to start, but to average 39 a game since then in district play. And there's a great consistency if you look down through the schedule and click on those games. There's a great consistency with which Midwest City has played since then. So I really, really like Midwest City here. Although all due respect to Altus for trying their butts off to win a ball game in a tough year, the way they did last week. But yeah, I love Midwest City here.
Jacob Source.
You know, Noble, you guys said has been a Jekyll and Hyde team. I think they're more like a Jekyll and Jekyll team because they just have not been able to find ways to not play crazy games. I think it's just been one crazy week after the other. Some of these scores, they look like Tecmo Bowl scores. And so I expect nothing less than that this week, although I can promise the Noble Facebook guy one thing, don't expect this to be a nail biter, man. I think Midwest City's the better team, obviously playing at home. Now, I think the one thing Midwest City needs to be careful about is looking ahead to that game next week at Elgin, because that's obviously going to be the game probably that decides the district champion, assuming Elgin takes care of business this week. But being at home, being the more talented team, Noble's biggest weakness this season has been their defense. If you look at some of these scores, and considering that, Mike Gundy is from Midwest City, it's really hard to pick against Midwest City as well. After the performance, the A+ performance Coach Gundy's group put up in that second half this past weekend against Texas, which, by the way, was an absolutely fun, electric atmosphere in Boone Pickens Stadium. That was a really fun game. But yeah, I got Midwest City a 14.5-point favorite at home. I think they win the game. I've got the score 42-28. I think Noble just backdoor covers, but Midwest City wins the game and moves on. And luckily for Noble, it won't be another nail biter this week.
So Jake, are you saying that Bo Jackson plays for Midwest City in this technical game?
Well, if Bo Jackson was on any team, if you guys remember playing Tecmo Bowl, Bo Jackson was not fair. It was like cheat codes. He was untackleable. So, Midwest City's got the horses, or the Bombers, I guess you could say.
I do have to give a shout out to NobleBears.tv. Those guys over at Noble do an absolutely fantastic job on their Squirrel broadcast every week. Really set the standard for what everyone is trying to do on Squirtle. Let's move on. Game number 6. Let's go back to Class 2A for our first Squirtle game of the week, which features the Millwood Falcons at Hennessy. Millwood finished 4-6 last season and missed the playoffs. Now in 2022, Millwood has rebounded to a 7-1 record. with their only loss coming in week 1 to Heritage Hall. Millwood dominated OCS 40-13 last week. Hennessy, meanwhile, sits at a very impressive 6-2 overall record, 4-1 in district play, and have won 4 straight, including a 50-40 win in Alva last week. Tom, you're calling this game. Let's start with you, Millwood at Hennessy.
Well, it is the first matchup since these two teams met in the state semis back-to-back years in 2010 and 2011 when Hennessy was winning their back-to-back state titles. And with their win over Alva last week, the Eagles clinched their first winning season since 2015. And with a win in this one, they will still have a chance to their first district title since 2014. Titan Hicks set all kinds of school records, running through and throwing over the Alva Goldbugs last week. He ran it 35 times for 243 yards, scored 7 rushing touchdowns. That's a school record. He threw it 34 times, completing 16 for 190 yards. That's 69 plays he had a hand in, 433 yards, and they held on to win 50-40. Ricky Hunt had a similarly impressive effort last week in Millwood's 40-13 win over OCS. He had 145 rushing yards, 104 receiving yards. He scored 4 touchdowns. Going into the season, he had some offers from Iowa State, Navy, and several other D1 programs. I'm excited to see Titan Hicks and his 2,750 total yards and 36 touchdowns against a very good Falcons defense that's given up 11 points per game. And I won't make a pick, but I'm going to have a fun time calling this one, I hope.
Tom, I have to give you a not so fast, my friend, on that Millwood district title. Regardless of how this Hennessy game plays out, they play Blackwell next week. Mark Rogers.
You're stealing my material here. It's a classic look-ahead game because Blackwell's got to go to the dungeon that is Wheeler Houston Field in Blackwell the following week, which won't matter at all. Millwood wins this game. Titan Hicks is going to be a player to watch the next few seasons, but Millwood had been in 2A2 fighting it out with maybe a little bit more difficult schedule the last couple of seasons, and they moved them over here where OCS had been kind of dominating, and they knocked off the 2-time defending champ last week. This is all Millwood. Talked with Darwin Franklin last week on the radio. He's done a great job of getting the basketball kids at Millwood that played on the state championship team out for football. And I think this team they're legit to try to compete in Class 2A. The top half of that bracket could be pretty friendly for them going forward in the playoffs. So I think Millwood wins the game against Tennessee pretty easily.
Tom Miller.
I got to give it up to you, Tom. You work the company line, man. You're making this matchup sound like it's going to be a good matchup. I'm going to get fined. I'm gonna get fined by the brass. I understand that. You're Al Michaels trying to trump a Thursday night football game. I mean, this is not going to be a game at all, and it has nothing to do with Hennessy. Hennessy's a quality team. Titan Hicks is a terrific young man. As you mentioned, he just shredded Alva last week, and Hennessy's playing as well as anybody in the district. They've outscored their opponents 195-61 during the current 4-game win streak, but that's it. I mean, Millwood is by far and away the class of the district. They've outscored their district foes an average of 49 points a game to 7, and they have the best player on the field every single night, or almost every single night in Class 2A, in Ricky Hunt Jr. I hope, my friend, you have a heck of a game. I really, really do. But Hennessy has no shot even at home against Millwood. They are by far and away the class of this district.
You would think I was still selling advertising in Hennessy.
You're right. You know, about halfway through, you had me convinced to change my pick.
Bill Haston, let's go to you. Millwood at Hennessy.
I heard that interview Mark did with Coach Franklin, and he did not sound out of breath. He didn't sound like his pulse rate was accelerated at all. He just
who Coach Franklin or Mark?
Coach Franklin. No, he sounded like he not a bit surprised by what's going on with them, and just like I mentioned, Midwest City's in such a really good place right now with great consistency week to week, and I feel the same way about Millwood. I don't know a lot about Hennessy. I know their offensive numbers for 3 weeks have been amazing, but I think, you know, Millwood averaging 49 a game in district play, coupled with the defense you talked about. I think this is a 2-touchdown game for Millwood.
Jacob Esource.
Hennessy's been a great story this year. I remember we were talking about Hennessy early in the season as being this could be a year where they'd make a leap forward, and they definitely have.
But they were 0-10 3 years ago.
Yeah, they've really, you know, and this freshman quarterback, you know, I think Hennessy's got a lot to be excited about for the future. I think they're going to be a team, you know, to reckon with in 2A for the years to come. But not this season, the class of 2A1 and the class of 2A may reside in Oklahoma City in Millwood. If you look at some of the common opponents these teams have had, Hennessy beat Alba last week, but conceded 40 points. That score was 50-40. But whereas Millwood beat Alba 66-16. And then another game to mention, Millwood at OCS, handled OCS easily 40-13. Hennessy, on the other hand, lost to OCS 15 by 20 points, 15-35. So Hennessy being at home, I don't think gives them a puncher's chance. But like the guys have mentioned, Millwood's going to have the best player on the field. And unless something miraculous happens, the Hennessy Eagles are going to have a tough game this weekend. I got Millwood an 18.5-point favorite at Hennessy. I think Millwood wins the game. I think Hennessy covers, but I've got Millwood winning 44-27.
Well, I got to tell you guys, I'm fighting for eyeballs Friday night with Todd and Mark, and you're killing me. You're killing me.
Well, I think it'll be a fun game to watch. It'll be a fun game to watch. So tune in, because it's going to be when Hennessy has.
Let me just say this. Paul Nix has done a remarkable job at Hennessy. You alluded to the fact they are a great story. They're just a couple of years removed from going 0-10. They're going to be a factor in the future, but the future isn't here right now. And Millwood is, I'm not knocking Hennessy. Hennessy's just having their chance at the top dog in the district like everybody else has. So I hope it is a good football game. I really, really do.
I just hope Rejoice and Millwood face off that'd be a good.
That would be a fascinating game.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, Washington and Rejoice are on the same side of the bracket. Millwood's on the opposite side of the bracket. There's also a couple other teams in 2A that will contend, but I think that Rejoice's district is kind of interesting too, with Veneta and Sequoia, some good teams. But the 2A bracket is got a lot of teams in there that are solid. I mean, and that District 7, District 8 dynamic too, where Kiefer surprised me last week. Victory, Kiefer, Beggs, all in the same district. Beggs could be a team that finishes third and has to go on the road to say Veneta in a first round game. That's some interesting stuff there.
Rejoice has scored 114 points, Mark, the last 2 weeks with a backup quarterback. So
yeah, they're a machine. I would think Rejoice is the team to beat. To me, they are. What they've done this season. I had Washington going in, and Washington is really good. Washington has Division I players, at least 2 of them on the field, and a lot of depth. And then they've got the experience of being there the last 2 years. So this 2A class is going to be fun to watch.
Yep.
My pick was Washington before the start of the season. I'll still go with them. But, man, after seeing Rejoice Christian a couple of weeks ago, they are really, really good and very well coached.
You were there. I was there. I mean, Chance Wilson goes down in the first quarter, 3-minute mark, I think, of the first quarter. And you think, oh, no. And Cale Marley goes out there, and after a couple of possessions, he was hot, and then played great last week. So,
what is the status on Wilson? Do you know?
It looks like what I think they're hoping they can, and I think they can get by with holding him out until the first round of the playoffs. It was a knee strain. You saw what I saw. It looked bad as it happened. He got chopped down pretty hard on that right knee. But I think that's the hope. Like if they were playing a state semifinal this week, he'd be out there. But I think they feel like they can let him heal another week for sure, maybe 2, and then go into the playoffs 100%, close to.
Good.
All right, guys. Our second Squirtle game of the week takes us to 5A3. Coweta 8-0, and the Tigers travel to Del City to take on the 7-1 Eagles. Del City's lone loss of the season to McAllister was a game featured on Squirtle and was maybe the game of the year that we've had on the network so far. Coweta beat McAllister 49-0 a few weeks ago, which is obviously a very good win for Coweta. Coweta's defense hasn't given up more than 14 points all season. Mark Rogers, you'll be on the mic for this game, so give us a preview.
That Coweta win over McAllister was a crazy one. That may be the most shocking result that I've seen this year between 2 teams that I expected to be really good. I was impressed with both Del City and McAllister in that game, and it was one of the best finishes I've seen in a game that I've called ever between McAllister and Del City. All the points scored late in the game. Bill's done a fantastic feature on Eric McCarty and had some time that he spent with him, and I was really impressed with him. So for Coweta to beat McAllister 49-0, That's great. Carson Laverty is back. He came back last week and played a few series. They've got depth at quarterback at Coweta, and two Tiger teams that are black and orange have really made a big step up from kind of somewhat contenders last year to this year being the favorites in their respective classes. That's Cushing in 4A and Coweta in Class 5A. Del City is good. They've got Division I talent. They've got Big 12 talent on the field. They don't have a ton of depth. They have to play guys both sides of the football. I think Del City is going to fight. I think this game is not going to be anything like the McAllister-Coweta game that was 49-0. So comparative scores don't work in this one. But I do think that that Coweta wins the game, but they win it in a close one. Hey, Del City week 1 beat Choctaw, who's rolled ever since, and it looks like they're the favorite in Class 6A Division II right now. So that tells you, I think that that the winner of Class 5A this year would fare pretty well in Class 6A Division II. But I think this is going to be a game I can't wait to see. But I think Coweta wins a close one.
Todd Miller.
Well, the numbers would certainly lead you to believe that it's going to be a close game and perhaps maybe somewhat of a low-scoring game. Coweta has allowed a touchdown or less in 6 of 8 starts. Del City has allowed 25 points total in their 5 district games. Mark alluded to the fact that Carson Laverty will return. He will not start the game. Kylan Starks, who's been their starter ever since Laverty went down with a broken collarbone and had surgery on it after week 2, has really not missed a beat. 1,300 passing yards, 20 touchdowns. Laverty came back, was 2 of 2 passing, ran for a 2-point conversion last week. Man, that is a double-edged sword that Coweta has, and as if they needed any more firepower, they're going to get it back. The two schools have never played. Interesting enough, though, Ryan Laverty was the head coach at Putnam City North, and he went 1-1 as the head coach at Putnam City North against Del City for whatever that means. The Eagles have Division I talent. Their wide receiver, Thomas, you'll like this, Tom, headed for Kansas State. He has almost 650 yards receiving this year and 13 touchdowns. I like Del City with the home field, but I just think Coweta is the best team in Class 5A, and I do think they beat the Eagles despite that home field advantage.
Tom Nelson.
Yeah, there haven't been that many teams this side of Bixby who have been as dominant as Coweta has been this year. They've won every game by an average of 43 points. Talked about the McAllister win 49-0, and then beating Carl Albert by 30 back in early in the season, week 1. Lolo Bell, Will Mason, they look great running the football. They got the great quarterback situation now, 2 good ones that are healthy. Del City's only loss was that thriller to McAllister a month ago, but since then they've made Sapulpa, Tulsa Memorial, and Glenpool Pay racking up 56, 63, and 72 points those 3 games. Tim Harper at Coweta is a great coach and a great guy. I've known him since he was at Mena, Arkansas. He's a big supporter of what I do in my real job. So I'm going to go with the Tigers in this one.
Bill Haston.
This is
So, Tom, you can be bought.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Okay.
This is the best team Coweta's ever had. And there's a lot of sometimes you'll watch a team and get beyond midseason, and you have to decide, is this just a hot team, but probably destined for a quick out in the playoffs, or is this a special team, or are we looking at a championship team right now? And that's how I feel when I watch Coweta. I was at the McAllister game. Granted, Eric McCarty, you could tell in the pregame he wasn't right. And after 2 possessions, he hardly played after that. So that's a little misleading. But if Eric McCarty had played that night, Mark, Coweta wins that game 49-27. You know what I mean? That's the difference. Coweta was clearly better. Coweta, good grief, last 6 games has outscored opponents 317-25. I just think they're a team of destiny, and I think they're destined to win their first championship. The 4 best teams I've seen this year are Bixby Union, Coweta, and Rejoice. Those are the 4 best. I'm not saying, I'm not pound for pounding them in a tournament or something. I'm just saying when I saw them play, or when I have seen them play, those are the 4 best teams I've seen. And Coweta blew my mind that night. And that place was jam-packed, and everybody thought it was going to be, an instant classic. And Coweta just choked them out. It was very impressive. So needless to say, I like Coweta. I do like Coweta. With all due respect to a really good Del City team, but I like Coweta.
Jacob Eastors.
This is the best game of the weekend, in my opinion. The best game on tap this week by Squirtle. For everybody, plan on tuning in this week to Pater. Because the slate of games this week is as good as it's been all season. But you can't get much better than the number 1 team in Class 5A against the number 3 team in Class 5A. You got number 1 on the road at number 3 Del City, and so it's just going to be a fun atmosphere and just a lot of fun to watch. You guys mentioned you don't want to do pound for pound. Well, the nerd I am, I do like to look at teams, applying my formulas to come up with like who is the best team in the state overall. And obviously Bixby's the best team in the state overall. There's no question about that. And I don't think Union is that much far behind Bixby, but I would probably put Coweta the next best team in the state. Their resume is incredible, beating Carl Albert 44-14, and Carl Albert's one of the top 10 teams in the state pound for pound. Hammering McAllister 49-0. I granted McAllister's best player didn't play, but that's still an impressive win. And so Coweta is the team to beat in Class 5A, which 5A is an exciting class this year. Del City, a lot of credit to them. They're going to make this game interesting. Del City is a tough team. They're nitty. I watched them play Deer Creek earlier this year, and Deer Creek had the best of them most of the game, but Del City just would not give up. They just kept fighting. And that's what I expect in this game. And keep in mind, Del City beat Choctaw. I think you guys mentioned this, a 6A team. They've also beaten Booker T. Washington. So Del City has and beat Midwest City 41-0. So, we are literally talking about probably two of the best 10 overall teams in the state of Oklahoma, football teams by any class. With that being said, I got Coweta a touchdown favorite at Del City. And I think Coweta wins the game. I just think that they're just too good. They're too good of a team. Del City keeps it interesting, but I've got Coweta winning 31-24.
I think we've got to give Bill a lot of credit here. He comes on this show and we give him one Tulsa area game to pick. And he's done a heck of a job. I tell you what, we give him one Tulsa team to pick, a Tulsa area team to pick. He knows his football.
You gave me Blanchard Bethany here too. I'm like, yikes. I do like Blanchard's jerseys. I like those jerseys a lot. So I have to ask real quick, since you handicap these games, that's so interesting to me. If Bixby and Union played next week, what would your line be on that ball game?
Funny you asked that. I actually was looking at some of those. I did a little thing where I said, what would Bixby be favored over every team they played? And Coweta was actually the second team that would be the least amount of an underdog to Bixby, and Union would be number 1. But I think Bixby would be a 2 touchdown favorite over Union. I'd have
roll over that sports book. He's gonna lay the points with Bixby on that.
Yeah, well, Bixby no one has been able to play them close. They're just a well-oiled machine. But Tulsa Union, that's what I'd have the line. And that's on a neutral field. At Bixby, they'd probably be a 3 touchdown favorite. At Union, I may have it, 11.5 or something like that. So, but I'm really excited about this Coweta Del City game. Who's calling this game?
That's Mark.
Mark, and it was Sam.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a great pair there in the booth. You guys got to tune in. You guys got to tune in to Squirrel Friday night and watch this game. Watch all the games, but make sure you catch some of this game. This is going to be a fun game to watch. Good old Oklahoma high school football.
Mark, no 50-50 burger before this game. What's the food choice in Del City on Friday?
Well, the last time I took Adam to Mid-Del Taco, and it's just not up there with the best tacos at the other places. The great taco village in Alva, is that right? Taco Bandito and Enid.
You're right.
Ponca City, Tacoville in Oklahoma City. Not up there.
Yeah, there you
last
go.
time we were there. So I'm not trying to rip Mid-Del Taco. It's been there for a long time, but that's up in the air yet. I don't know. I just want to know where Todd's dog is going to go eat before the game.
Well, I was going to say, Mark, if you want Buddy to go have dinner with you, you're going to have to do a little bit better than Mid-Del Taco.
That's probably right. His standards are higher than mine.
I'm sure. He might go for a pasta bowl somewhere.
And Buddy will bring Mark a doggy bag.
I'll take it.
Exactly
I'll take it.
That's exactly right.
All right, guys, 7 games down, 1 more to go. Our final Pater Pick'em game, Blanchard currently leads 4A2 at 5-0 in district play. There are 3 teams that sit at 4-1: Bethany, Tuttle, and Newcastle. Bethany won 4 in a row after a 40-34 loss to Tuttle in September. Blanchard lost their first 2 games of the season at Noble and versus Piedmont, but have rattled off 6 in a row since then, including a 30-28 win at Tuttle on October 7th. Todd, you're on the mic for this matchup, so tell us what to watch for.
Well, I think you're going to see really good quarterback play in this ball game. I mean, Carson Cooksey has thrown for almost 2,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions for Blanchard. Taylor Heim will start at quarterback, but he will not play every snap behind center. They like to bring in Kale Wetwiska. We saw them do that in the season opener back in week 0 against Jones. Because Heim is such a good athlete. They want him to touch the ball every way possible. He'll run it. He'll throw it. He will catch the football. In fact, he has just been outstanding this season. He has a total of 9 touchdowns rushing and receiving and a total of about 650 yards rushing and receiving. So Taylor Heim is a really, really good player. So too is Carson Cooksey. Blanchard's defense has been really, really good since that 40-34 loss back in week number 2. They have allowed 34 points during their current win streak, and 24 of those came in the game against Classic SAS. So they've been very, very stingy. Somebody else to watch for the Broncos, Jaden Gilliland, outstanding linebacker and running back. He's rushed for almost 1,000 yards and 19 touchdowns to pace the Broncos in that category. And he also is among the leading defenders with 50 tackles. I think this is a really, really good Class 4A district matchup. I saw Blanchard last year. I've seen Bethany this year, and I'm excited to see him go head-to-head on Friday night.
Tom Nelson.
I'm going to give you a matchup here that I'm kind of going to keep an eye on. You talk about Carson Cooksey, and Todd just did. The secondary he's going against, that defense for Bethany, they've intercepted 14 passes this season, led by Taylor Heim and Kale Witwiska, and they've had 21 sacks. They have the firepower to heat up Cooksey. Cooksey, we'll see what happens. I went to the history to get some help on this one. The all-time series is tied at 8, so that didn't do any good. Blanchard won by 3 in the playoffs last year, so this is kind of a coin toss game. I'm going to take Blanchard because we've had Coach Craig on the show before, so I'll go with Blanchard.
Mark Rogers.
Well, we've gone this far in the program without mentioning the fact that Bill Hazen's niece is Jamie Combs, the head basketball coach at Tuttle, who's got a shot to win a state championship this year. And at Tuttle, they'll be rooting for Bethany to win this game and kind of get in the sweet spot so the Tigers can claim the district championship in that 3-way tie scenario. But if you do go back to last year's game in the playoffs at Bethany, Carson Cooksey didn't play in that game. Blanchard was beat up at the quarterback spot, and they were rotating guys in at that position, including Jackson Lamanick, who's on this team this year. And Bethany, I think, is not quite as good as they were last year, but still really good. I think this is a really tough game to pick. But if Blanchard could get it done last year there at Bethany, I think they can get it done again this year. And so I think Jeff Craig's team is going to win the district championship. That would put Tuttle in second place, set up a potential Tuttle matchup with Cushing in the second round of the playoffs, which would be interesting because the last time those two teams played, Tuttle ran over Cushing. So the Class 4A bracket got a lot of interesting games in 4A4. 4A1, it looks like Clinton is going to be in second place in that district to me, the way that the point differential will work out. So a lot of fascinating things. Clinton could even be in fourth place if things break the right way. But anyway, I'll go with Blanchard over Bethany. I think it's a toss-up, though.
Bill Hasten.
It's a total toss-up. And like I said, I don't know enough about personnel on the two rosters to really make an educated pick. But, you know, I mean, one team's been red hot for a month, one team's been red hot for 6 weeks. And so on the basis that I'm going to go with Bethany at home. But I meant what I said about Blanchard's jerseys. The stripes on the sleeves, those are big time. Those are beautiful. That's a beautiful jersey. So in spite of the what is Bethany, a purple and white? Is that what they go with?
Yep.
Bethany? Yeah, that's a nice uniform actually. So this is a clash of good unis, but I'm gonna take Bethany to win it at home.
With
Bethany
the horseshoe
nice,
and purple on the side of the helmet.
They got the nice Colts helmet and better quarterback than the Colts.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, that was a good one. That was a good one. Mark's right. Bethany may have more talent at quarterback right now than the Colts do. This is a classic uniform battle. It really is. This is a classic uniform battle. But it's also, a top 10 4A football game. Bethany sitting at 7-1. has one of the best teams they've had in a long time. Playing this game at home is a big advantage for them. Both of these teams, played Tuttle in tight games. Blanchard won a game at Tuttle, 30-28. How many teams can say that? They won at Tuttle in the last decade.
0.2 of a second ago, they won that game.
Yeah, exactly. It was but Blanchard can say we won at Tuttle. Blanchard's 2 losses are both to 5A teams, Noble, Jekyll and Jekyll, and then Piedmont. Bethany, has not played as hard of a schedule as Blanchard has. Blanchard's the 9th ranked team in Class 4A. Bethany's the 5th ranked team. And by the way, I can't not mention if I'm going to mention Bethany, I have to mention their girls basketball team this year. Pay attention to Bethany's girls basketball team this year. There's a girl named Kaiten Donley on that team. Her dad's Matt Donley, who played at Weatherford, who was a great player, but she's a 6'1", 3, plays shooting forward. I think she's a sophomore, but she is a superstar. She's definitely a D1 talent. Bethany is going to be one of the teams to beat in girls basketball in Class 4A. But back to what we're talking about here, football. Bethany, the home team, I've got them a 4.5-point favorite. That home field advantage, but I think Blanchard wins this game. I think Blanchard wins it 34-28.
Well, if we're talking about girls basketball, we have to mention Coach Craig's daughter, Carly, who is the point guard for Miss Tasha Dieselhorst, Northwestern Lady Rangers basketball team, who are getting started here in the next couple of weeks. Another season in Alva for Coach Dieselhorst. So shout out to her and the Lady Rangers. All right, guys.
Well, I'm sure that Coach Dieselhorst probably has Kaiten Donley on her radar. I'm sure she does.
No doubt.
That's the first
Any last
recruiting
minute
violation
comment?
we've had all year.
Yeah, we might get a letter.
Somehow
cease
Jake
and
finds a way at the end of the show just to take things off the cliff. So I want to see if he goes to court in that wearing that hat. I mean, I sure think would impress the judge.
We got basketball here in a few days, Mark, and in fact, Memorial's got a heck of a scrimmage coming up, a couple of days. Anyway, you guys remember Brian Montanati, who played Oklahoma State?
Oh yeah,
You got a son, freshman.
He has a heck of a son, a 9th grader.
number 1 ranked kid in the class in the nation.
Yeah, 6'7", projected to be 6'10", has an unbelievable complete offensive game. I kept hearing about him. I went to watch him do some instruction work with a guy in the spring, and I was like, wow. And then I watched him in Summer League. Wow, again. He's got offers now from Oklahoma State and Tulsa. OU is on the verge, if they haven't already. Arkansas is on the verge. And Michigan, Coach Howard at Michigan, he's about to offer as well. So this is a kid that just turned 15 a few weeks ago.
Well, he's also on the U.S. national team too. He is a superstar. And Brian, his head coach at Owasso, I know Brian really well.
Yep.
Went to Oklahoma State at the same time he was hooping, and Brian has stayed pretty quiet about him. Hasn't really pumped him up too much. He let him kind of make a name for himself. So yeah, that's a really good point. I'm ready for basketball. Maybe we should do a basketball pick'em show.
This 9th grade class, both in football and basketball, is uniquely loaded with big time kids, seriously big time kids. So, but I think
even a class of 25 is good too. There's a lot of this is really about as good of a time in Oklahoma high school basketball as we've seen in a while for that sophomore, freshman, and even junior class. And they've been excelling in the AAU games. And so it's basketball is gonna be great this year.
Well, and the Sapulpa girls coach tells me that I guess, was it last year's 9th grade class, currently 10th grade class, was that Oklahoma has the best state ranking in the country with that particular class of kids. So it's basketball is loaded up.
I'm fired up. Give me hoops. I'm ready for hoops.
Well, and remember, guys, nobody covers high school basketball like Squirtle. So get when high school season kicks in, Squirtle's going to be there.
Well, Squirtle is actually covering the Tournament of Champions here coming up shortly. And I think, Mark, you're doing a preview show for basketball for Squirtle coming up as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll get that done here in the next few weeks. Tournament Champions will be really good. You got Dale in there with Bartlesville, Union. Help me out, Bill. Who else is in there? A couple of other.
Edmond North.
Yeah, Edmond North is in there.
Oh, it's Edmond North. That's good. Yeah, I love Edmond North. Love that.
Yeah, they're
guy.
loaded. Absolutely loaded.
There was a little bit of a bombshell today in basketball. Terry McMorris ended up at Douglas, left Dell City, so that was a big loss.
Wow,
For,
is that right?
yeah, big loss for the Dell City team, who again they'll be loaded and they are probably the team to beat in Class 5A, but that's a big loss for them.
Wow. Speaking of tournament champions, I think he was the MVP of that championship game over Memorial last year. He was great.
Well, and another basketball bombshell, the Thunder accidentally won a game tonight. So
Sure
that's
did.
you know, so
58
All right.
combined, Mark, for SGA and Trey Mann. 58 combined.
That's pretty good.
boy, if Trey Mann keeps playing as good as he is, Josh Giddey better pick his game up a little bit, or he's gonna be trade bait.
I trade Trey Mann to the Lakers for Russell.
There you go.
Until 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely not.
Until 2 weeks ago, Josh Giddey was a teenager. He load managed tonight. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, what,
Well,
3 or 4 games into the
I'm just
season?
motivating him.
It's unbelievable.
We're into full tank mode. I'm all for it right now. After the way they've started, I'm all into tank mode. Let's go for the number 1 pick.
That kid from Greece, I would be happy if they went 10-72 for him.
Yep, I'd take a 10-72 for that.
Yeah.
Andy, take us home.
Start the parade in Oklahoma City. If we go 10-72 in about 3 years, we're going down. We're down.
You're right.
He would also lead that parade, as he's been a proponent for that for the last several years. But just want to thank everyone for joining us on the Squirtle Pay Dirt Pick'em show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Diesel Horse Law Firm. Thank you to Bill Haston for filling in as a guest picker for us tonight. Be sure and visit squirrel.tv to watch all of these matchups on Friday night. Also, Pay Dirt on Friday night, which will show you all of the big plays, the touchdowns, the interceptions, the turnovers, and all of these matchups. Again, Todd, Tom, and Mark all calling games this week. We talked about those matchups, so tune into squirrel.tv to find those games. We'll be back next week, week 10 action with 8 new great games and new guests. We'll see you then.